Tomorrow of the day, Greece and Ukraine sign a US gas supply deal. The supply of US LNG will begin in January. Regions Eastern Europe. Greece and Ukraine sign a US gas supply deal. An agreement to supply Ukraine with US liquefied natural gas (LNG) was signed in Athens during the official visit of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Greece. Zelensky and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis attended the signing of the deal between Greece gas supplier DEPA and Ukraine's Naftogaz, as did the United States ambassador to Greece Kimberly Guilfoyle. The gas will be supplied via pipelines from the northern Greek port of the Alexandroupolis to the Ukrainian port of Odessa. Zelensky said that the supply of US LNG will begin in January. Until then, Greece will supply Ukraine with natural gas to cover its needs for the coming winter and to make up for damage to its energy infrastructure from Russian attacks. Mitsotakis stressed the importance of an Athens energy meeting on November 6-7 in making the LNG deal possible. In that meeting, US Energy Secretary Chris Wright and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum joined over 80 American officials, EU energy ministers, and top LNG executives for talks in Greece hosted by the Atlantic Council, a Washington based think tank. The United States alone could displace all the Russian gas in Europe with what we are building, said Burgum at the time, signaling strong US intent to fill the void left by Russian supply cuts. The push comes as President Donald Trump continues to leverage the US position as the world's top LNG exporter, tying energy supply to trade relations with Europe and efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. Earlier Sunday, Zelensky and Mitsotakis held talks that also covered Greece's involvement in Ukraine's post-war reconstruction, mostly in construction, healthcare, digitalization, and monument protection. In addition, Zelensky made a pitch for Greece to acquire Ukrainian weaponry. I talked about our capabilities in producing defensive weapons, Zelensky told reporters after the meeting. Zelensky will next visit France on Monday and Spain on Tuesday. Zelensky also thanked Greece for its support of Ukraine's quest to join the European Union and its backing of sanctions against Russia. For Greece, border inviolability is non-negotiable. We continue to support to the best of our ability the Ukrainian people's heroic resistance, Mitsotakis said, also expressing his revulsion at the intensification of Russian attacks that include non-military infrastructure and result in civilian casualties. Zelensky, who arrived in Athens early Sunday afternoon, will next visit France on Monday and Spain on Tuesday. It is his second visit to Greece. The first was in August 2023. Regions UK. আমি দা মোল রোজদার বান কা ওজারসি আমি দা মোল রোজদার বান কা Regions UK. Is the UK government entering a political storm with its plans to tighten its asylum system? The British government plans to tighten its asylum system in a series of sweeping changes modeled after Denmark that aims to reduce immigration and quell the political storm over migrants making dangerous English Channel crossings to enter the country without authorization. The policy changes to be announced by Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood on Monday in the House of Commons are yet another an attempt to make the UK less attractive to those seeking refuge and easier to remove migrants who don't qualify for asylum. Mahmood said it was a moral mission to control the borders and reunite a divided country on the flashpoint issue that has helped fuel the rise of the hard right Reform UK Party. Though, as the daughter of migrants, she denied the ruling centre left Labour Party was adopting far right talking points. People can see huge pressure in their communities and they can also see a system that is broken and where people are able to flout the rules, abuse the system, and get away with it, Mahmood told the BBC. Net migration. Successive governments have failed to halt the flow of migrants to British shores through a variety of efforts that included the previous Conservative government's plan to send arrivals to Rwanda for asylum processing that never took effect. That policy was scrapped last year when Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who leads the Labour Party, was elected last year and vowed to crack down on migrant smuggling gangs. More than 39,000 migrants have arrived by boat in the UK this year, surpassing the almost 37,000 who arrived in 2024, according to the latest Home Office figures. The number, though, is still shy of the nearly 40,000 who had arrived at this point in the year in 2022, which recorded the highest number ever. Although the numbers arriving by small boat have risen, they represent a fraction of total immigration. Although the numbers arriving by small boat have risen, they represent a fraction of total immigration, with most people entering the UK legally on visas. Net migration. The number of people entering the UK minus those who left topped 900,000 in the year to June 2023, according to official figures. The surge was driven in part by hundreds of thousands of people fleeing war in Ukraine and China's clampdown in Hong Kong. Net migration stood at 431,000 in the year to June 2025, according to the Office for National Statistics, down 49.9% from 860,000 a year earlier. The issue of migration became more politically volatile this summer as protests that occasionally become violent were held outside hotels housing asylum seekers after a migrant was arrested and later convicted of sexual assault for trying to kiss a 14-year-old girl. Benefits could be denied. The new reforms include revoking the UK's legal duty introduced under EU law in 2005 to provide support for asylum seekers, allowing the government to withdraw housing and weekly allowances that are now guaranteed. Benefits could also be denied to people who have a right to work but don't, and those who break the law or work illegally. Refugee will also be regularly reviewed to see if people can safely be repatriated. Shabana Mahmood. Refugee status will also be regularly reviewed to see if people can safely be repatriated. Safe ways will be designated for migrants to claim asylum without having to pack into overcrowded inflatable rafts and risk crossing the choppy channel. Denmark's success. Chris Philip, a Conservative member of the parliament, criticized the policy for tinkering at the edges. He said the changes wouldn't have the impact of the scrapped Rwanda policy and said every migrant entering the country without authorization should be deported within a week. I don't object to it in principle, but it's not going to work, Philip told the BBC. It's gimmicks. It's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not going to stop people getting on boards. The Home Office said the new policy was modeled Denmark's success at reducing its asylum applications to the lowest point in 40 years. The Home Office said the new policy was modeled Denmark's success at reducing its asylum applications to the lowest point in 40 years and removing 95% of those who sought to settle there. Denmark was once a haven for refugees. But as Europe and the Western world have struggled to deal with mass migration from people fleeing conflict, famine, and poverty, it has imposed strict limits on newcomers that has drawn international criticism for discouraging people seeking refuge.
Two major events this summer, the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, BEFF, in Monaco, and the Third United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice, reflected the growing recognition that protecting the ocean is not only an environmental issue, but also a political, economic, financial, and social imperative. The challenge now is to translate this rapidly emerging consensus into concrete, sustained action. Covering over 2/3 of our planet and accounting for 97% of its biosphere, the ocean is a critical ally in our efforts to tackle climate change, ensure food security, and support livelihoods. Without a healthy ocean, sustainable development will remain a distant dream. But protecting and restoring marine ecosystems costs money, and financial flows are falling far short of need. To close this gap, ocean protection must be regarded not as charity, but as an opportunity, a high-value investment in our collective future. The vision of a thriving ocean economy that offers both short-term profit and long-term value in terms of food security, employment, and resilience galvanized the political leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, philanthropists, and representatives of multilateral organizations and civil society at the BEFF. The event delivered on its goal of unlocking funding for ocean-positive projects, including through innovative instruments like blue bonds and blended finance vehicles, which combine public, private, and philanthropic resources. It thus represented an important first step toward anchoring ocean protection where it counts, within the financial industry. A pipeline of investable